Welcome back! I'm Valerian, and today I want to talk about a little thought experiment related to magic. This video will be kind of low stakes, hopefully a bit lighter, more for funsies than my first couple, but I still think it'll make for an interesting discussion. Basically, as the title says, what might magic look like if it only had 4 colors instead of 5? I don't actually think the game would be better off this way or anything like that, but I do think it's just sort of neat to think about. Especially because while people often debate over what a 6th color might do, they rarely consider the opposite proposition. I actually first got the idea for this in thinking about another Wizards of the Coast game I used to enjoy playing, Dreamblade. Now, Dreamblade was a collectible miniatures game they produced around 2006, 2007, whose lore was about psychics who battled in the collective subconscious of humanity's dreams. While it was pretty short-lived and kind of expensive to get into, it definitely had a devoted fan base when it was around. Dreamblade Squad, express your fondness in the comments. Anyway, Dreamblade had a total of 4 aspects, its analog to Magic's colors, in addition to aspectless machine-type creatures as well as multiple aspect creatures, again like Magic. You had Valor, which had knights and angels and general goody two-shoes creatures, making it feel a lot like White. Fear, which had giant bugs, undead monsters like zombies, felt similar to Black. Passion, the aggressive, quick burst without staying power aspects similar to Red. And lastly, Madness. Madness probably has the least in common with any of Magic's colors, but I'd say it's most similar to Blue. Particularly how Blue was conceived of in very early Magic. It could kind of do anything, and it did a lot of crazy, miscellaneous stuff, and flavorfully it was just sort of surreal or weird. A bit like early Blue cards like Dance of Many, Psychic Allergy, or Time Walk that hint at Blue being a little more eldritch or sanity warping, perhaps. Funnily, Madness was far and away the weakest and most useless aspect in Dreamblade, and this was one of the biggest balance issues with the entire game. I often wonder if part of that happened because of concerns over Blue's dominance of early Magic. Anyway, the real point of talking about Dreamblade is to point out that they made the clear decision that the color they would exclude to tidy things up was going to be green. Given the flavor backdrop I mentioned earlier, it kind of makes sense to exclude green since the forces of nature wouldn't be too influential in the world of dreams. Creatures that would clearly be green in Magic, like dryads and shamans who produced extra spawn points, that's Dreamblade's equivalent of mana, they tended to be impassioned, so they effectively folded green into red as their solution. This was the time in Magic's history when creatures were still not that dominant. To put things in more perspective, Baneslayer Angel wouldn't be printed for a few years yet, and we were just coming off of the Ravnica, Time Spiral, Lorwyn, Shadowmoor blocks. Plus, in Dreamblade, almost everything was a creature, and spawn points were decided once per turn cycle, making red-style burst mana pretty much the only way you could ramp. But I don't think undermining green would be the best way to treat Magic. Green's general niche of having the thickest, most impressive creatures, as well as permanent-based ramp in the form of mana, dorks, and land acceleration, set it apart from the other colors in a way that's often invaluable, and flavorfully, while green is often kind of misunderstood in this regard, it represents passivity and acceptance in a way that, in my opinion, is actually refreshingly dignifying to those concepts. To tackle which colors I actually would remove, I'm going to break the question into 2 parts. I'll talk about how I'd rearrange the color pie flavorfully, and then how I'd rearrange the pie mechanically. So, from a flavor standpoint, the color I would most likely want to remove is Blue. In general, Blue's niche of being about knowledge for its own sake and curiosity always felt a bit shallow to me. It's a pretty modern or post-Enlightenment thing to value, which often makes it feel a little odd in the more primitive settings of Magic. I feel that more than any other color, creatures are more likely to end up being blue solely because of their elemental or racial associations with blue than a legitimate motivational or philosophical connection to the pursuit of knowledge, though all colors admittedly have that problem to some degree. And while scholars of various kinds have existed in many civilizations, I think they could easily be reassigned to the other colors in the absence of blue. White-aligned scholars could seek to understand the world to better appreciate God's design, or in the hopes of making discoveries that improve civilization. Green-aligned truth-seekers might desire to get more in touch with the world around them and better appreciate the natural world and their own connections to it. And the scientist who seeks to do things because they can, or for their own pleasure, or for their own personal gain, would be somewhere in either red or black. More than anything, I would fold blue into black specifically. I think it would actually improve the comprehensibility of what black is really supposed to be about. With how blue is portrayed, it's pretty clear that blue is closer to amoral than immoral. The unethical science experiments of a Gitaxian Phyrexian or Innistrati Scab Stitcher might be read as evil, but they're more the actions of someone who doesn't consider morality a meaningful construct and doesn't worry about it, more so than someone who's deliberately trying to act evil. When black mages, like necromancers, animate the undead, we're told they often are doing so because it's efficient and convenient, not because they desire to be perceived as evil. More why not than why. But black gets so wrapped up in the totems and icons of classical evil, the demons, pentagrams, and skeletal hordes, that it can be hard to take it seriously when people like Mark Rosewater reassure us that no, black isn't supposed to be inherently evil. If we were to dilute the notion that black is about power and personal gain to the exclusion of all else, with the idea that it can be about any personally chosen or valued ideal, including the persistent pursuit of the truth, it starts to feel a lot more nuanced. The similarities between blue and black are, I think, especially clear when we consider the extent to which blue is described as seeking personal improvement or personal perfection. Is not gaining power and authority over oneself, traditionally a value of black, integral to achieving personal perfection? And how does black pursue power and achievement without knowledge, including that occult or forbidden knowledge? Isn't blue's belief in the tabula rasa and the potentiality of individuals to change an empowering belief when combined with black's interest in the individual claiming dominance? In this alternate pie, white and green represent communal values differentiated by interest in imposing new forms of order versus retreat to traditional ways, and red and blue would represent the values of individualism, the former more hedonistic, and the latter the more abstractly principled. Blue's elemental domains of water and air I would be happy to reassign to red, which already has dominion over the explosive natural forces of fire, lightning, and earthquakes. Since red has already dabbled in avalanches, snowstorms, and mudslides over the years, I think enfolding all destructively elemental type magic into red would work well. But perhaps green could pick up some slack here too, since it's gotten cards like Hurricane or Tropical Storm. In general, blue's ability to be tricky or capricious seems more like it should be part of black than anything, since black is amoral and embraces unconventional or seemingly underhanded tactics. I think I would also give black, or retain within bluic, the domain of time magic. It seems like it would fall under the same umbrella of fighting dirty or messing with a natural force that ought to be sacrosanct, not unlike tampering with undeath. Illusion magic I would delegate to white, seeing as white might be expected to deal with the platonic ideals of things. The short story Lauren's Smile, one of the first pieces of magic fiction to really delve into how the different colors operate, portrays white-aligned mages as being capable of creating simulacra that represent the abstract ideal or essence of a concept. Okay, so, what about mechanically? Blue has a very distinct mechanical niche, arguably the most unique one in Magic, and it's no secret that most people either love it or they hate it. That's good design. I would remove a different color, and it's probably not surprising that my choice for this one is white. White's gotten a ton of flack lately, both in the EDH scene I'm more familiar with, and apparently from more competitive players as well, from what I can gather. Certainly in EDH, white is pretty clearly the weakest color, especially now that red's gotten shored up with a lot more to do in the format, and I certainly think a lot of unique and fun things to do in the format that make it feel different and special in its own way. White's main utility is being able to answer and deal with what other people are doing. EDH Rec's top white cards list is dominated by stuff like Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Wrath of God, Return to Dust, Austere Command. We're told that the price white pays for having all those answers is not having a lot of them at once, i.e. the lack of card advantage. White is supposed to get, in exchange, ways of deriving indirect card advantage through tax and stacks type means, and the aforementioned field wipes, which typically answer many of the opponent's cards with one of yours. But personally, I don't see that identity as being very fun. As a casual player with battlecruiser tendencies, I get excited to play Magic because of what I'm going to do, not what I'm going to stop other people from doing though the tension of trying to avoid dying in certain situations is often enjoyable. And I certainly don't enjoy playing or being anywhere in the vicinity of strategies like resource denial or mass land destruction, though I feel that the latter can be okay if it's a win con and we scoop in response to it instead of having to play it out. I'm also aware of an argument that even though white has powerful resource denial effects, its inability to provide its own resources in order to break parity prevents it from utilizing those effects in an optimal manner when considered alone. This might be a more controversial opinion, but I think the fact that most colors have blind spots or types of cards they can't really answer directly is actually a good feature of the game. I like the fact that in a multiplayer free-for-all, mono-black players have to do favors for players who can deal with problematic enchantments, and all eyes go to the blue player when a nasty instant or sorcery hits the stack. So I, for one, would be fine without as many catch-all answers floating around. Although, as an aside, I do think that to balance those differences out, it would be nice if playing multicolor was meaningfully more difficult to execute in gameplay and/or deck building. What I think has worked best for white so far is printing cards that reward you for specific niches within white with somewhat uncharacteristic rewards. I'm talking about recent cards like Srom Senior Edificer and Dawn of Hope, which let you draw lots of cards as long as you're substantially committed to equipment, auras, and vehicles, and life gain respectively. This kind of thing gets me energized about the cool stuff I want to do, like loading up a Voltron commander and bashing face, and enables me to keep up with others at the table while doing so. However, when we start to consider breaking the color pie apart, it wouldn't be a stretch to just reassign those niches. Life gain is also strongly represented in black, and to a lesser extent green. Red could take over equipment and vehicles mattering in green auras, and so on. In general, I take all of white's aggressive, proactive components like the weenie strategy and delegate them to red, whereas white's ability to slow down what opponents are doing with effects like Oblivion Ring seems like a good fit for blue. After all, an Oblivion Ring effect is a lot like a counterspell in that it's temporary and a somewhat fragile answer that makes up for it with versatility. White's anti-this or that abilities like protection I would probably let each of the 4 remaining colors do, but only towards things that that color is good at dealing with, like, say, protection from instants and sorceries in blue, or protection from artifacts or lands in green. So that's a general overview of my thoughts so far, but this is something I've just started thinking about pretty recently, which means that my opinions on this topic are far from set in stone, and I would not be surprised if a lot of viewers out there disagree with my principles. Let me know in the comments what you think a 4-color pie might look like, and hopefully we can have an interesting discussion. The last video definitely got some. I'm happy to say that many people brought up good points. My position's definitely shifted in various things after reading it. I also want to announce that I'm planning on making a video about lapsed Magic players in the future, another topic I think is very underserved and under-discussed. So click the link in the description of my survey about times you've stopped playing Magic. Even if that's not happened to you, I'd still love to hear your thoughts on what you think might be capable of pushing you to do something like that. So go ahead and let me know. That's everything I have for today, so goodbye!